Okay, let's talk about coaching in general, especially within Smite, and just a quick little rundown of the way that coaching within Smite works/doesn't work. Okay, so right in front of us, I was just going to run through this, that the hierarchy of how coaches should be, right? And the whole reason Smite struggles, not as an esport, just to be a coachable thing, is because you are one person divided between 5 people as a coach. So you have to kind of pick a niche, right? You can't be an owner, that's high risk, but you have to pick a niche. Whether you're like, my advice would to just not pick more than 2 of these roles, okay? So general manager, head coach, assistant coach, data analyst, strategy analyst, and then a role coach, like all 5 roles. That's a lot of attention to be divided up as one person, which I think is a great reason why Sam Marbeck joining the Dragons as an assistant coach is huge. Hopefully, it shows a lot of growth potential for that team, because I don't want to say they're all old heads, but you know, it's year 10 of Smite. They're all players that have been pretty well established, and how much further can those players grow within a game that has become quite stagnated is really interesting to me. So I'm keen to see how that Dragons roster actually goes with an assistant coach. So real quick, I'll just go through what each of these things on the screen actually does. So the owner for Smite, I'll talk in Smite terms. The owner for Smite is Hi-Rez. They hold the money. They pay us. They fire you as well, which is why Hi-Rez are kind of a pseudo general manager at the same time. They hire, they fire, they give you warnings, they do everything that HR would do, right? Human resources would do. The only thing that they don't do as a general manager within esports is, you know, set your scrims up, and that's probably it. They don't actually give you they don't give you accommodation. They give you Alienware PCs, but they don't, but they do, but maybe, but someone else has it, so who actually knows? Eventually, you'll get your shit sorted with hardware. They don't schedule your transport or accommodation, though, so they're not really a general manager, other than firing you. Okay, everything else you kind of have to do for yourself, which is where sometimes you might want to get a coach or general manager as a SPL team to help you with transport, accommodation, team parental figure, just general quality of life changes outside of Smite. Completely fine. I can't really name one. I don't know if there is one in the SPL, but maybe there is. I don't know. Next up, head coach. They should know everything up and down. Get rid of up in this situation. Hi-Rez should know everything that's going on. Doesn't really matter. The head coach doesn't really have to talk to a general manager, because that's our boss, that's our owner. It's a company, it's not really a person. So scrap the up and down. The head coach should just know the direction that the team wants to go in. They should delegate problems to different staff members. We don't have that because we're a single person show in Smite. Lead meetings, run draft, decision maker, final voice, just kind of like the authority figure within the Smite bubble. Assistant coach is someone who spends a lot more time with players than the head coach should. So if it's the other way around, you may as well swap roles. Because, so the thing is with assistant coach, yeah, okay, let me just get through this first. They spend more time with players, they talk about pathing, their runs, out of scrim exercises, constantly picking the brains and relaying information for the head coach or other players, and they should have a more solid idea of the players' preferences when it comes to matchups and things like that, because they should be spending more time with them. And the reason being, they don't necessarily need to know more than the head coach as a standpoint about the game and about like everything. But if you're spending more time with the players and getting a more familiarity with them and becoming more close to their level, rather than spending more time with the head of staff and things like that, when you say things, I don't want to say you're seen more as a friend, but you're seen more as a it's a double-edged sword, right? It's either, why should we listen to the head coach because our assistant coach is always here, or why should we listen to the assistant coach because he's just hanging out with us, while the head coach is out there, you know, going hard on the numbers and fully laser focused, which apparently happens way too much. Anyway, next, data analysis. Math guy does builds, win rates, spreadsheets, all that good stuff. I could just open one for you right now. Hopefully this doesn't... I go here and go Valks. I'll show you just a quick little rundown of what data analysis is. It's not that. It's just, this is the most bare bones thing ever. It's just a win rate draft. It shows what we're successful with. Another thing would be the objective sheet. It shows how much XP you need, how much they give, so therefore you'd need how many archers to get that. You know what I mean? Very boring stuff. And the reason that Smite has had a couple data analysts. I think Kret was a big one for Eager. He'd always look at cost efficiency with items and things like that. My personal feelings about data analysis within Smite is a game where you won't hit everything. The items will never have full cost efficiency because people suck, right? And most math builds are good when they're completed, but they're fucking awful when they're not. You know what I mean? So power spikes are a big impact on Smite. So maybe math builds aren't the best, but I think micro and macro wise, I think this stuff's pretty important. Let's just say it's 8 minutes on the board, and their green buff's up, your green buff's up, and oracles are up. What's the best way to farm? I don't know, I haven't really ran the math. Obviously get all three if you can, but let's just say if you if you get their green buff on an invade, but you lose oracles for it, is it worth? Everyone will be like, oh, I think it is. No, it definitely is. No one fucking knows. No one's running the math. Like, no, you don't know. We're all just guessing unless you've actually done the math. And then the last position, not the last position, but the strategy analyst or a strategic coach spends more time watching the other opponents, how they draft, how they play, what they do, what their identity seems to be, and things that we should look for going forward once we verse them. King's pretty good at that, I feel. They have a good run. Or last year, obviously. I don't know what the fuck they're doing now. But King's had a really good read on everybody, and they just knew how to draft against everyone and play against everyone. Happy they won Worlds, because I feel like they were the only team that kind of adapted to who they were versing in a minimal way, in a tiny way. And then role coaches, obviously, you just have someone who plays your role with you. Normally they're a high-ranked ladder player, or someone who has comp experience that has left. A Smite example would be Dimmy when he was coaching Aqua. I know that they ran a lot of stuff in solo, and they got to the workshop a little bit, which is super valuable. I don't think Cherry does jungle too much. Like, I don't think he goes into it. You know, it doesn't really matter outside of laning, really, because it's such a mid-core game. Anyway, that's how it works. That's like a bare bone structure, and the way that it works in Smite sucks because it's one person divided between all these roles, so you have to kind of pick where you're going to go. Don't be this guy. Anyone that wants to get into coaching, do not be this guy. No one gives a fuck about the math. I think you should just be a head coach and just make sure you know what team the team wants to go in, and just remind them that this is the direction we want to go, blah, 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 blah. Be annoying. Now, let's look at other, or like the way that this works in a structure. This is the Dallas Fuel, which is an Overwatch team. My favorite Overwatch team. There we go. 5 players, similar to Smite. Look how many staff they have, okay? So take the owners out. These guys hold the money. Doesn't matter. They have a general manager. They have an assistant general manager, probably because they're traveling a lot and they need more stuff. And then they have a head coach and 2 assistant coaches. Now, Rascal was a DPS main, I think. So he should probably, instead of being an assistant coach, he's probably just going to be a DPS coach. You know, teaching them what to do, how to get better. If you're stuck with aim, how do you improve your aim? That stuff doesn't exist in Smite, so we'll move on. Team Liquid. These guys have a data engineer, a remote analyst, a head analyst, a business analyst, which is obviously not bad, assistant coach, head coach, general manager, right? So they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They only have 5 staff, which is quite nuts. But it's 5 times the amount Smite has. Team Alliance for Dota, 5 players, right here. Their positions are weird. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then never mind. Oh yeah. Former. Active. They only have a manager. Team principal. Maybe that's GM. I don't know how that works. And then it seems to be fucking nothing, to be honest. That's the closest to Smite that there is. But they've had, you know, a bunch. Manager, coach, head coach, manager, assistant coach. The reason I'm making this video is one thing that we should all recognize, not as coaches, but as Smite people in Smite. So the direction that the team wants to go in, like that, or know the direction the team wants. As a coach, you have to be doing it for the passion, obviously, and for the opportunity to win worlds. And if you don't believe you can bring that to the team that you're applying for, I don't think you should actually coach. Actually, that's wrong. If you're in America, you should definitely just give it a go. If you're not going for it in Australia, there's no fucking way. There's no point anymore. What was I gonna say? Yeah, I was gonna. This is like a pseudo video, like why I stopped coaching. Why I stopped coaching? Let's have a look. It's 2,400. I was getting this. I was getting $2,400 a month. What is the minimum salary? The minimum salary in Australia per month. Minimum salary is 21.38 per hour, or 816 per week. I was actually getting a little bit over minimum. That's the fucking Philippines. Anyway, I was not getting paid at all, pretty much. Like, I was losing more money than I was gaining due to not going to work to be in the SPL, right? And for $2,400 a month, it is not worth. That's also been cut for remote coaching. It's also the fact is SPL is in a standpoint for the last 10 years where it's been the same people. There's no scouting, right? If you think about who's next up, who's actually next up outside of the SEC, you can't really think of anyone. Like, if I was going to make a list of who you'd be scouting, like Axiom, Jisoo, Miggy, Autospeed, obviously. In support, nobody, right? Gamma's the only free agent, but he's obviously super good. Like, where's the I don't want to say there's no raw talent. It's just that there's no want. I feel the game has lost its want. And without the want, there's no point playing or coaching Smite. Obviously, the teams that are already solidified and have their thing, power to them, right? There was a possibility that I might have assistant coached the Dragons in the position of Sam Marback. But even then, I didn't really want that. It would have been like, people would have said, oh, it's so good to get experience with like PBM and things like that. I'm like, is it though? Like, is it? Because the way that I'd want to coach would not mesh well with anyone in Smite. Anyone in Smite. The way that I feel like Smite players should be doing it should be 3 hours of scrims for 3 hours, right? Rest. Come back. Not 3 hours. My bad. 3 games. Rest. Come back. Scrims. 3 games. Rest. It should be scrims. 3 games. Right. Rest. VODs. On day 2. So day 2 is a half day with VODs and review. And the way that this works is you'd pick the coaching staff, would go through, handpick. It would be good if you were able to, because of Spectate not being absolutely dog shit, Stasis Mood coming in clutch once again. But anyway, you should be able to get clips from these 3 games, or watch through these, at least 3 of these games out of 9, get a good sample size, VOD them, eat together, review it together, draft a plan together, and then the next day is a full day of scrims. Therefore, you should be well on the way for VODs, right? VOD should have done its thing. You have a meeting before scrims. And then, you go through on your review here and what you want to fix, what you want to change, what you want to run, blah, 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 blah. And I just don't see teams wanting to do that at all. I think it's... The lack of passion has killed my passion, if that makes sense, which is unfortunate. But it's still what it is. I still love coaching in general. That's pretty much what I do for work. So I don't think the want to help will ever go away, because that's all it is. All you're doing is helping a bunch of people. So I don't think that'll ever go away for good in me, because it's my career. But in Smite, it's going to be rough to see where it goes and what coaches do within the year. I think every team makes massive glaring mistakes. That is just a fundamental. in every other MOBA and every other esport, which is fucking always disheartening for me, especially everyone's like, oh, you're the Valks coach, you were the last. I'm like, obviously I was the last. None of us had experience, or none of them had experience, apart from WoW and Aqua, which was side lane, so how are you going to get 3 newbies to be on the level of everyone else? Another thing would be... what was it? I had it in my head, and now it's gone. SCC this year? No. Oh, that's right. I was going to talk about know the direction that the team wants, and it's this way that high-res know the direction that Smite's going. So you have to understand, I would 100% be on board with Smite if it stopped shriveling and shrinking to be a sustainable core. But Smite right now is a sustainable business, and that's how they see it. The esports is just a market to marketing, essentially. Get more eyes on the game, which means sell more skins kind of deal, and that sounds like the biggest propaganda in the world, but like the truth is, Smite will not grow again. Okay? Smite has hit its little beautiful world where it's sustainable. They can do it for however long they want to do it. If things get a bit too expensive and like cost inefficient, they'll cut a tournament or they'll cut like a tiny bit of prize pool or something like that, but they'll keep that going as a core, and I think that's completely fine. And if you want that to be your job for however long, that's completely fine. But I didn't get into anything. Like, if I compete, I want to be the best in the world, right? Whatever it is. I get this weird thing where I just want to be the best, okay? In Smite, you even... like, being the best in Smite's like being fucking platinum in League of Legends, bro. Like, I'll say it. It is insane. Because of the sample size. That's all it is. It's just because of the sample size. So I think the passion to help is still there, but like... being the best in world, Smite, like winning worlds. Have you actually won worlds? Because there's like 15,000 people that play the game. Anyway, I'm getting a bit too toxic. Unlucky.